listening to This Won't Fix You. I'm your host, Nadine Pittham, and this show is a curation of interesting models, metaphors and images discovered or manifested through my work as an accredited psychotherapist. You can expect to hear nifty ideas, clever language and thought-provoking ways of looking at life. Each episode, you'll get one of two alternating perspectives. First, a conversation which introduces and discusses the theory or idea, and we call this the A side, and then the B side, which, while not therapy, is a deeper exploration of that theory or idea from a more therapeutic standpoint. Hello, welcome to This Won't Fix You. We have Helen Sanderson today. Helen Sanderson is the Clutter Therapist. She has written The Secret Life of Clutter. She's a psychotherapist and decluttering expert who really understands that clutter isn't just about stuff, it's about what's going on underneath. With a warm, compassionate approach, she helps people gently face the emotions and stories tied up in their homes. Helen is not about quick fixes or Pinterest perfect rooms, although she does like Pinterest perfect rooms. She's also about creating spaces that feel safe, calm, and true to who you are. Her work is about healing as much as it is about organising, making room inside and out for what really matters. Helen, does that seem fair? Has that summed you up?
I think that sums it up pretty well. Thank you. Nice.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you. Okay, so I'm going to actually let you introduce the metaphor that we're going to be working with today, because it's from your brain, it's from your work, it's something that means a lot to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I talk about clutter as a burial mound, and why would I say that? So, in the many years that I've been working with people that have cluttered homes, you start to see themes that arise through the clutter, and the theme can often be a trauma, a bereavement, something really difficult that somebody's been through. Or it could also be a dream or a hobby or something that somebody hasn't yet realized. So, buried underneath the burial mound of clutter, there is a story to be told about this person. And sometimes there are painful parts of the story, and sometimes there are parts that have been lost or forgotten about and need reclaiming and need, I like to think about seeds, and they need replanting. So, there are beautiful things that can be found, parts of ourselves that we've lost touch with, that are hidden away in under the pile, the burial mound.
I love that, like the mound itself as a literal thing of all the things in somebody's home that you then excavate together.
Absolutely.
And as you sift through, you're finding parts of the people that you're working with.
Absolutely. And it is like finding treasures. And I think excavation is a brilliant word. And I think it's a word I've used for psychotherapy as much as decluttering, because it is it's a rather than internal excavation, it's an external. And sometimes you're just literally moving soil around, and then other times you find treasures, and then you find the bits that link the bits, and that's a fantastic image, because it really is like that. That you start piecing yourself back together again. The other thing about the burial mound is that, that when we've buried something that we can't face, a loss of a relationship, a loss of a loved one, a loss of a sibling, or anyone really, there's an avoidance that happens, that people tend to avoid going near it. And sometimes we do need to process it, but we need to process it in the right time with the right support. So I'm very mindful of the fact that sometimes if there is a trauma underneath that burial mound, that it's being excavated in a really gentle way that supports the processing. Because I think when you're processing objects, you're also processing internally.
And so the people that you're working with, I should imagine they'll be surprised by some of the things that you find too. You were talking about treasures and sifting through the treasures. I imagine you and they don't always know what's clutter and what's treasure. And I imagine people are discovering alongside you.
Absolutely. Sometimes I might have an intuition about something, and then there'll be things that patterns. You start linking the patterns, and I think you probably do that as a therapist when you're working. You're getting little clues along the way, and it is like therapy for me. It is. There's such a strong parallel between the external processing and then the internal processing, and it's like the clutter represents a state of paralysis, of stuckness. How people often will say to me, Helen, I don't know where to start. I feel overwhelmed. I'm frozen. I'm paralyzed. It's too much. And they know that the journey ahead is potentially a painful one, a difficult, challenging one, where these feelings that are buried are going to come up.
Mm.
And so being able to work through those feelings and work through that process in a compassionate way,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes we can't do that on our own,
Mm-hmm.
work through those things.
And so I imagine pacing then is so important, that you're talking about the gentleness of the way that you work. That must be pacing, all of that must be important, especially in the early stages when somebody perhaps has just met you. I
Mm-hmm.
imagine it's quite a scary prospect that there'll be a part of them fearful that you're going to come in with a bulldozer
Mm.
effectively. And so that I imagine that pacing is really important to convey that gentleness.
Yeah, and I mean, I always work with people to get to know them before I'd even go into their home, and contract really clearly about what I will do and what I won't do, and so because it is it's an incredibly intrusive process, and it does require. I mean, I'm very blessed that a lot of people trust me to go into that space, but I'm very mindful of understanding a little bit more about the history and what might we find, so that I'm prepared in that journey.
So those treasures, those little clues that you've been picking up on, some of those you have in your mind even before you set foot over the threshold.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we would have had a conversation. I always like to think this is like the foundation of the house. We're not going to build a relationship or build a project on misunderstanding. We need to build it on clear contract. And I need to understand, what might I find? Might I find a skeleton in the closet, sort of thing, and in which case, how are we going to deal with that together so that we can deal with it? Because ultimately, decluttering is about dealing with something that has been got into static,
Mm-hmm.
and finding flow and movement again. So if you go to an osteopath or a massage therapist and you've got these knotted muscles or something, you're giving them permission to work through them. But maybe there's a bit of a case history that they might want to take before they start knuckling into your muscles and discover that you had a broken something. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of really about care. Yeah,
It's
taking.
such a holistic process, isn't it?
Mm,
You're
yeah,
taking care of all parts of somebody.
yeah.
I'm curious about how it works in terms of the number of people that you're with at a given time, because most people, not most, I don't know why I'm making massive assumptions, many people share their homes with other people. And I imagine there's one person who contacts you, so your contract is with one person. And yet,
Mhm.
I imagine there could be whole families or different generations. How do you navigate
Um,
that?
so it can get tricky sometimes when, I mean, it's not uncommon that somebody would say, "Oh, can you sort out my partner?" And then, of course, I can't unless they want to work with me. So there might be, I've designed a system that obviously I use it and I think it's brilliant, but um, I use my home declutter kit, which I created, which is my system. And in part of that system, there is a don't know card. So if it's a possession that belongs to somebody else, then it goes in the don't know, because ultimately my approach is that you can only make decisions about your own possessions. So if you want to keep it or let it go, then that's up to you. If it's your husband's or wife or child's things, then they need to be involved in the process. So anything that we find in the process that belongs to somebody else goes in the don't know box. And then they would ask later on, okay, so I found these things that are your possessions. What do you want to do with them? And that would be up to them. But it can get more complicated when there are different people with different needs in one household. And it's very common that, as we all know, the saying opposites attract. So the minimalist attracts the maximalist. And then how do they navigate that together? How do they navigate their communal spaces? Because it does feel like the one who's dominant dominates the space, and then the other person doesn't get their needs met. So if the dominant person is the one that has clutter, it can be very, very oppressive and difficult for somebody who needs more minimalist, needs more simplicity.
Mm.
Uh, and there are strategies that we would talk about. How can we contain the clutter? So then it becomes about contain. How can we contain that and allow you to have some space? But actually, what I'm talking about here, I'm talking about two adults living in one house. We have this same conflict within. So many of my clients have come to me and said, I can't live like this anymore, but I don't want to do anything about it, or I can't do anything about it. And so I see this conflict of the minimalist and the maximalist in them, the impasse that has kind of then got into a log, like I can't think of the word, loggerhead, or a sort of a pushing against.
Mhm.
And so quite often what I find that I'm doing is trying to create space for the part that doesn't have a voice.
Mhm.
So, and it's usually the person that's called me up and says, I can't live like this anymore. I need space. I need space to think. And but then there's this part of me that doesn't want to let anything go. And so I'm then mediating between the internal
Mhm.
world of somebody and trying to allow them the sort of the quieter part of them to have a little bit of space as well, not to the exclusion of the other, but to have, so both parts. So how do we do that? I mean, there is an example that's just come to mind of a colleague actually that when I was doing my training. She was absolutely amazing. She had this meticulous flat. It was minimalist, meticulous, and then she had one room that was her artist studio, and it was complete chaos. And I just thought, if somebody had actually kind of demonstrated for me the perfect way of meeting the needs of both sides of themselves by having their messy room, if you like, and their messy room was their creative room, and they threw paints all over the place and everything, and then the rest of the house was really orderly. And so I think that we have to be creative, but there are ways of doing it, allowing ourselves to have a full experience in the home rather than just, kind of like
Mhm.
half of us gets to win.
I think that's such a beautiful articulation of what it is in therapy, is that we are trying to listen for the voices. You said the quiet voices, the ones that don't necessarily have as much airtime because there's a dominant voice that for some reason, yeah, has become dominant for all sorts of different reasons. And it ties in with the internal family systems model of therapy, doesn't it? That there are all these different parts of ourselves that are fighting. And like you say, whether it's literally two people or whether it is two parts of a person, I can see that
Exactly.
you're trying to hear all of it, and
Yeah.
and it's clear in the way that you talk. It's really beautiful. There's no judgment of the cluttered part, and there's no judgment either way,
Mm.
valuing overvaluing one part or the other. You're allowing. You just want to hear from
Mm.
all the parts. That's what it sounded like as you were talking.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that the actual experience for the person is quite tormenting. Like, how do I mean, just to take another analogy, how do I stay the weight I want to stay and eat cake? It's like, how do I, it's sort of like, because there is a tendency to go into extremes, and that this will be one of the things people say to me, like, I don't want to be a minimalist. I love I love my beautiful things, and however they're taken over now. So it's like getting helping someone, guiding them back to where they'd like to be rather than where I think they should be, to a place that is an, with more ease, where they're more in balance, where
Hmm.
where the part that needs that ease and a little bit less has a say as much as the other part that wants to keep everything.
And there must be shame in this. There must be, as
Oh,
you're excavating that burial mound and the way
mm,
that you're talking about one part of them, even though you're able to see them and not judge those parts. I imagine for the people, certainly in my experience as a human, but also as a therapist, that judgment comes so quickly if
mm,
we feel that there is a part of us not towing the line, not doing it how we should be doing it.
mm. Yeah, and I run a program actually to help people understand a little bit more about those, the internal dynamics, to help people understand, because I do think that we're much more empowered when we understand ourselves. Shame is important, because I believe that when we start to change, shame kind of, it's like somebody gets the volume on the radio and the shame voices turn up really loud. So as soon as somebody picks up the phone to speak to me, the shame is like, it's really really high. And then if I'm even allowed to come into the home, it's like it's on full volume. It's a massive massive thing. And to take over the courage to face that shame or to go through it. And I don't, it is so interesting to me how, when we're in a process of change, how the critical voices will just completely annihilate us. But I've kind of got to that old and wise stage now, where I think, well, actually, that's kind of what happens, and that's why the hand holding and the support to go through that is so important. Because otherwise the shaming voices can eat you alive.
Hmm.
They can. But there is so much shame that people feel, even now, when we've moved away from 1950s housewives and all of that. There is still a belief that we should be able to keep our home, and if you've got ADHD, you're going to be struggling.
Yeah, I've certainly written down a few points and wondered if we could get onto ADHD a little later. Before we do that, can we go
Yeah.
back to, you use the
Yeah.
word change quite a few times, that you often, people have this vision, don't they? I want to be that person over there, but I'm currently here. And it's that
Mhm.
gap that causes, it's the distance, isn't it, between the person we want to be and the person we are now, that
Mhm.
often carries the weight of all the shame. And people in your work, particularly with the cluttering, I imagine that change is actually possible. For some people, it's a lot about accepting in therapy, but for you, it's really, really is about changing this, that you can take people towards that sort of different version of themselves. And I think I thought that was interesting that you just kept bringing that in, because change is notoriously difficult because we have to know how to do it, don't we? And people don't, so they just look at it all and say, I don't know where to start. And you have to somehow, yeah, find those steps. But I imagine they emerge a little. I don't know
Well, how
if
does the
that even
process?
makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it is a journey. And I mean, I talk about, I mean, I'm sorry if I'm triple metaphor person, but I
Bring
think
them
about
in, bring them in.
a journey up a mountain, and you want to get to the view. But some people don't make it to the view. They may only make it to base camp 1 or 2 or something. But people will say to me, "Oh, I can't never get up to that mountain. I'm never going to be able to get there." And I said, "Well, let's try and work together to get to base 1." And then when you've got to base 1 and you feel a sense of, well, I did that, I can do that. Maybe I can get to base 2. And part of the overwhelm, we might have a vision of where we want to go. This person that I want to change into is like the top of the mountain. Then it's great to have that aspiration, but when it becomes so far, like you say, away from where we are, it can then become crushing. But if you break it down into small steps, and base camp 1, base camp 2, and then you start building some momentum and some confidence, like often people, when they've contacted me, have lost confidence in their, not just in their ability to declutter, but their ability to be functional in life. So I'm very much someone who believes in work on the inside and on the outside. You know, if you can tidy your room and see that, then you can see that you can do something, even if it's just a small thing of making the bed in the morning or something. It's a message to yourself that you can take care of yourself, that you're worth it, that you're valuable, that you know that it's being the internal mother for yourself just by doing those little things.
Mm. There's so much tenderness in how you're talking about people needing to value themselves. That
Mm.
even making the bed is an act of self care,
Yeah,
and that you're trying to, we use the phrase handhold, trying to help people move towards. There's such
yeah,
tenderness in that.
yeah. And I think because a lot of people, when they come to me, they're with the shame factor. Oh, I can't even do this, and you know, a lot of self recrimination, and or well, it's a chore, and I don't want to do chores. You know, there's some sort of rebellious survival mechanism that's been activated that might have happened because they were told to tidy their room, and then they have this, you know, or I mean, I've even had clients who in their 70s, and they say, "Oh, my brother used to go out and play, and I had to do the ironing, and so
Mm.
now I do not want to do any ironing or any housework." And so they've spent their whole life rebelling against that experience, which I can completely understand because it's very unfair, you know. However, ultimately, a rebellious strategy doesn't really work for the rest of your life because the
Mm.
parents that you're rebelling against have gone, and maybe doing some things like making the bed and some just light chores around the house is going to make you feel good about yourself, and it's going to make you feel good when you come in through the door and, you know, after work, and it's going to make you feel confident and competent. So that rebellion against, well, my brother used to go out and play, doesn't really fit
Mm.
in the world as we're in now. And it's unpicking those things, isn't it, that help us to say, well, actually, no, I can make a choice about this. I can choose to do this for me. I don't have to be the rebel anymore. I mean, and I really struggle to give up my rebel. I love my rebel. My rebel helped me survive. But, you know, and here I am saying to people, I don't know if you need your rebel anymore. But, you know, be rebellious with something else.
I think that redundant patterns is again such a common theme in therapy, that people come in and they're basically, they come to therapy because the strategy that they've used before is just redundant now, and it's not just redundant, it's hampering their progress, their movement forward, their kind of becoming whole, for want of a cheesier phrase.
Mm,
And
mm,
so it sounds like it's the same thing that happens, that gosh, regardless of what area we work in, people still have shields against
mm,
pain. They still have these shields, and for you it's often physical things.
yeah.
um,
And those barriers, you know, when you've got an internal barrier against pain or, you know, defense or something protecting you, you can't see it, and it takes the therapist to help gently point it out to you that you know, maybe this is going on. Whereas when it's in front of you in your room, there's the barrier, it's the big pile of the burial mound, you know, then there's no getting away from it. And it is, you know, and I think in both cases it's fear of feelings, that we're going to feel something. If I go in there, I'm going to feel anxious, or I'm going to feel overwhelmed, or I'm going to feel sadness, or I'm going to feel angry, or whatever those feelings are. And I guess part of what I'm doing is saying, look, I'll help you get through this, and the feelings won't kill you. You know, you
mm,
will survive, and um, the pain of walking up that mountain, it won't kill you either. It will be
mhm.
tough on your legs, but you'll get there. So it's building a bit of resilience, I think, that
Mhm.
happens in that process.
And that, I think that's important, isn't it? Because you're not saying, "Oh, it won't hurt a bit." You're saying
Mm,
it is going to hurt, and I definitely say the same thing in my therapy room too. This is hard. There's a reason
mm,
why a lot of people don't do it,
mm.
because it's really painful.
Mm.
So you're not setting up any illusion for people that this is going to be a walk in the park. No, it's a walk up a mountain,
The
and
walk.
as such is going to hurt,
Yeah.
but you'll survive it. But
Yeah.
it's okay.
Exactly.
What
Yeah.
a tremendous privilege it is for you.
It is, and I love it, and I've been doing it a long time, and I still love it. And as you know, when people give you that trust, it's something that you never. I feel quite tearful. I don't know. It's like you never take for granted the trust that somebody gives you,
Mm,
whether it's your inner world in therapy, the therapy space, or whether it's inviting you into their home. And people
mm,
are often mortified when I walk in, and I try and say, look, I'm like the dentist. It's just another tooth to me, But when you're at the dentist table, somebody's prodding around in your mouth, and it feels intrusive. It
mm.
is. It's a big deal.
Gosh, I feel like I need to put some space around that. That's huge. It is a privilege, isn't it? The trust that people put in us, it is a privilege. Can we change tack? There's something I am
Yeah.
quite fascinated by, and I'm curious. I don't even know whether you'll have much experience of it because you're the clutter expert. You're not the I've decluttered so much that now my house is utterly empty expert.
Mm.
But I'm wondering about the flip side. If if our clutter is a burial mound of stuckness,
Mhm.
I wonder, is there a kind of an over functioning that you ever see in your work where people have kind of decluttered too much, or when the sort of drive for minimalism is perhaps a little overzealous?
More rarely, because
Mm,
they wouldn't be the person that's phoning me. However, people have said that they've done the Kondo Marie Kondo method and thrown everything away and then regretted it. And that's why my process
mm,
is much more thoughtful. I did actually write a blog saying that decluttering is about unfolding, not folding, because her sort of folding
yeah.
things, which it is, and it is partly about that. It is about folding things and making it look lovely and beautiful, but it is about what do you have to unfold in yourself in order to refold. So
Hmm.
there's definitely the other extreme, the more kind of OCD, perhaps stark side of throwing everything away. And people have said to me that they've done it and then they regretted it, or their friends have done it and then. But I think we're all different. I think that's something I want to come back to, is that some people will live in a cluttered home and then it will never bother them, and they're an academic and they're surrounded by books and they just keep buying books and newspapers and articles, and they just don't notice, and that's fine, isn't it? Who am I to judge? And then there'll be somebody else who is just like space. They like to see negative space, empty space. That for them is nourishing. And so, you know, how we are on that scale. And I think to come back to when we've got two couples that are living together and they have different needs, that's where it gets much more tricky. Or we've got those two different needs within ourselves, where some part of me likes space, but another part of me likes to be cozy. Then, sometimes maybe we're lucky enough to have a cozy room, like a womb room or something, where we can kind of go and just be in a little den, and, we need that. And then we have our more expansive spaces where we invite people over for dinner. But, not all of
Mm,
us are privileged enough to have enough rooms in our houses to have those different functions. So we have to find other ways of doing it.
mm,
I'm not sure if I've answered your question about the minimalists, but it's that we're all different. That's really
mhm,
important to me, that we respect and appreciate that our differences.
mhm. No, that makes absolute sense. If from a personal perspective, I don't like the clutter that my partner is slightly more aligned with clutter than I am. And what frustrates me is that I can't find anything. The clutter
Mm,
itself isn't as problematic as the fact that I don't feel efficient because I can't
mm,
find things. What's the point? I find myself saying it weekly. What's the point in having all the stuff if then you can't lay your hand on it at the point where you
mm,
need it? So it makes me feel inefficient. And so so heavily tied, isn't it, to my view of myself, that I want to be efficient. I want to be able to do things. I want that flow to be a part of my life.
And then that would be reflected in your values. So the values of somebody who wants efficiency, like I want to be efficient so that I can spend more time doing, I don't know, art classes or reading or playing with the kids or whatever, that my time needs to be here. That's my highest value. It isn't running around looking for the keys. So yeah, I mean, I think that I call that the planting plan. Everything has a place for everything. So everybody in the house knowing that this is where the scissors live and that's where they get put away. And if everyone can start learning that little bit of a system, it makes it easier for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think the issue comes in my family home is when there aren't enough places for all the things. And so that just lives in the corner on the floor over there because there isn't a place big enough for it.
And
That
that's
makes me go a
so
little twitchy.
yeah. So then if there aren't enough places, then things are full, and then things need to be emptied.
Mm.
So it's a bit like, I mean, it's a very another metaphor, but if the cup is full, then you can't fill it, put anything more in. So then actually that's where the decluttering process begins, really, is with
Mhm.
the weeding out. And I say clutter is decisions that haven't been made. So we need to make
Mm.
decisions about things. Are we gonna are we gonna keep this, or is it gonna go? And if it's gonna live here, where does it live? So it's a decision making process. And when we're tired and fatigued, or we're taking on kids, or we're taking on that, then we want ease, don't we? We want to watch TV or cook dinner, have a nice time. Don't force me to make a decision. Do you want to keep this? So that would lead me on to saying that decluttering is a project. I think it's a project. It's take time off work and do it.
I
Do it
see, right.
gently.
Don't try and squeeze it in at the end of a day.
If you were doing a detox, like a juice cleanse or something, would you expect yourself to run up the mountain as well? It's kind of. I think of it as it needs your time and attention because it is exhausting. If you think about the amount of decisions that you need to make, if you've got 100 books, you're making hundreds of decisions. Even if 80 of them are staying, you still made a
Mm.
decision about every
Of
one.
course. Yeah,
And that then
of
is
course.
a huge mental fatigue, let alone the emotional strain that comes in. Like,
Mm.
oh, but those books represent that training that I never did, or the training that I never finished, and if I let go of that book, then that's really an admission that I'm never going to do that again. So that's deep work.
Gosh, it is. Absolutely. God, that was so clear how you articulate that. Really clear that a decision about one book can encompass so much, emotional weight.
Yeah.
Tell me about guilt. Tell me about people who have potentially, maybe, I don't know, lost somebody in some way or another. They've lost something or they've lost somebody. I suppose because people could lose jobs, they could lose limbs, they could lose their faculties in some way or another, or they could lose a person. And I imagine stuff can be attached to that as well. And they might be quite comfortable to get rid of a thing, but there might be guilt playing. Now, this is me having thought about our conversation before you were sitting in front of me. So I don't know even how common that is, or it's certainly something I would probably feel. Is what I'm saying.
Oh, guilt is a massive thing. I mean, it's a
Okay.
very spot on question, really, because um, I mean, the classic thing is the wedding gift that's the fondue set that nobody uses is sitting in the cupboard, but it was a gift, and I feel guilty if I let go of it. But actually, it's taking up space, and it's your home, and you know there's a sense of feeling every time you let go of something that somebody's given to you, it feels like you're dishonoring them. It feels
Mm.
like a dishonor, even though they don't know that that thing is still in your cupboard. And I think that is certainly something about giving yourself permission to please yourself. and do what you need to do for you, and that actually that space maybe is better used for something that, like your juicer or something, not the fondue set. So, but then there's also survivor's guilt. So, I survived this situation. Who am I to be so lucky to have such a nice house? Or maybe I'm going to fill it and spoil it a little bit so that I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to really feel the guilt of the fact that I survived. Guilt and regret, also making the wrong decision. You're making hundreds of decisions. How are you going to make hundreds of decisions perfectly?
Mm-hmm.
That's what partly adds to the overwhelm when people say, "Oh, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I can't possibly do this perfectly, so I can't do it." So that's where I come in and I say, look, it's not possible. In life, how many of us have not made decision we regret?
And so, how do you handle that? And yet, it won't kill you. Is that the sort of angle that you take?
The system that I've got with the don't say, for example, my declutter kit with the don't know card. So the idea is that if there's something that I usually, what it's like when you do something for years. You can see what people, when somebody really wants something, that it's bang, it's keep it, bang. It's like it's a very clear sort of movement. And then when they're not sure, there's a hesitation. They'll be like, and they'll go, oh, no, no, no." And I say, put it in the don't know card, in the don't know box. And then that's then gives you a little bit more time to think about. So some decisions are easy to make. They're gut decisions. They're like, yes, go or stay. And then other ones need a little bit more. I need to sleep on it, or I need to reflect on it, or I need to talk to someone about it, or maybe I need to journal. Maybe I need to journal with it, or maybe I need to let go of this fondue set in a way that feels like an honoring of that gift. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it to my best friend or some, I don't know. There's ways of
Right.
doing it. So some of it is fast and some of it is slow. And so with my system, I try to mitigate against too many
Mm.
regretful decisions. Having said that, even though, I've said that, there will still be something because it's just the nature of life.
Mm-hmm. You said move it on in a way that honors the
Mm,
gift, honors the person who gave it to you. That feels ritualistic. And
mm,
what was it? Is it Dark Nights of the Soul or The Wild Edge of Sorrow? I can't remember. One of those two books talks a lot about rituals as an
mm,
important part of change, to go back
mm.
to something we talked about earlier, and that rituals enable us to move because they honor who we were. And everybody, for example, will celebrate a wedding, but not many people celebrate a divorce. And
Mm,
and and yet the divorce can be as liberating for both people who are going through it,
absolutely.
as difficult as it may be. And so it feels like you're talking a little bit about a ritual there as well that enables somebody to let something go, because it is an honoring then.
Yeah. I mean, in my declutter kit, the very last card is a ritual card.
Ah.
So, to place that card. So if something needs a ritual, if it is that, so we have one of the cards is a gremlins. So a gremlin is not, don't go there. That is definitely in the burial mound. It's, out of bounds. But then some things can go in the ritual card, and which is, this needs to be honored. This needs to be thought about. This needs, there is one example that I worked with, this absolutely gorgeous woman who had her wedding dress. She was divorced, but she still had her wedding dress and wedding ring and stuff like that. And we got it all out of the wardrobe because it had been in the wardrobe for maybe 10 years. And we laid it across a chair and we put flowers there and we lit candles. And I
Mm.
suggested that she take photographs of it. And then I think, you picked up on rituals, and I thought, how many rituals do you do on your own? Your rituals are usually done with other people, aren't they? They're usually witnessed.
Witnessed. Mm.
And I think that's what I do sometimes, witnessing, giving someone permission, but also witnessing this very painful period of someone's life and saying it's okay to let that go now, and let's do it in a way that feels respectful. And then she updated me about, she took the ring to sell it, and so there's the check-ins, there's the, it's not just we do the ritual buy, There's the kind of, yes, how did it go? How does it feel to let that go? All of that conversation around, because it's huge. It's huge. Some of those really significant parts of our lives that are buried in the burial mound of our clutter. Yeah, and we can't move them on because doing that ritual is too much to do it on my own.
Mm.
I need the hand holding. I need the witnessing.
And even you say too much, and I'm also wanting to add something, and it's not necessary to do it on your own. It's not,
Mm,
if it can be lightened by sharing it with
mm,
somebody, and somebody who appreciates the enormity and the depth of what it is that you're going through. The wedding dress story you gave is quite a poignant one, isn't it? And
mm,
that, yeah,
mm.
to have that witness, to have that shared with somebody, that'll be, I imagine that's an incredibly special moment for her, and will
Mm.
remain so for
Yeah,
such a long time. Indeed,
yeah.
a privilege. Before we sign off, can we go back to the ADHD question?
Mm.
I said the question, that the comment that you made earlier, because, like you say, everybody's different. People find certain things easier than other things. I wonder if there's a specific angle that you want to kind of go down here.
It became apparent to me that, because I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people about their clutter, and I started to notice these sort of common themes, and now, I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I don't diagnose, but I can say to someone, have you ever been tested? Because it's so common. It's sort of become, and obviously we're more aware of it now, as is much more in the media, but actually I've been kind of thinking this for many years, um and there is just something about the way time and space kind of don't really sync for someone with ADHD. They're usually, their brain is 100 miles an hour, and their body's a bit, kind of 30 miles an hour or something, and so there's this disconnect, and there's usually a trail of kind of unfinished things because they're sort of running at 100 miles an hour out the door or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of the work is about slowing things down to to kind of get back into the body, and to try and manage the time and space gap a bit easier, but also having less stuff. Having I always say, the less stuff you have, the less stuff you have to manage. And if you're struggling to manage stuff, have less.
Mm.
So I'm not saying that every ADHD person should be a minimalist, and they never would be anyway, because they are by nature maximalists. They're into ideas and projects and lots of things, but it's just having that mindfulness and awareness that having a capsule wardrobe would probably make life a lot easier. If it's just a shirt and a trousers and a something, it's just simplifying. Where can you simplify? Can you simplify the kind of foods that you eat? Can you simplify the kind of your routines? And can the people around you support you? So sometimes, often people with ADHD will say, if it's not in sight, it's not in mind. you know so that's why I have everything out. But then their partner, who likes a bit of less out, is like, so how can you have it out but with more order? Maybe you can have beautiful trays, or label things, label drawers, so that it's easier to connect. I think about, I talked about everything has a place for everything, but that's about creating a mind map. So if we played a game, you and I, right now, and I said to you, where do the light bulbs go? Or where do the scissors go? Or where's the sellotape? You could just go, bing, I know exactly where they live because I've got a mind map. But someone with ADHD won't have that. So part of it might be building a little bit of that mental room or mental
Mm.
home, so that it's easier to follow through and put things away, or make the bed, or just do slow those things down. I think it's really about slowing it down, and accepting that it's potentially always going to be a challenge. I mean, I'm dyslexic. I'm never not going to be dyslexic. And I know that when I start reading a book, if I have not got at least 2 hours, there's no point in sitting down to read it, because I'll get frustrated and angry with myself for not having got anywhere. So it's like we need to adapt how we approach things given our challenges. So given the challenge of ADHD, it does make it harder, but the environment can definitely support you to do it easier or better, more
I'd
harmonious.
like to draw that out, that how unique your approach is, because I do wonder if a lot of people, certainly I've heard people say coming into therapy, that they think somehow the therapist will have an idea about what kind of a person they should be, and this is how we're going to make you better, we're going to turn you into this kind of person. And what you've just said is, no, I work with you, I work with what you bring, what the kind
Mm,
of life that you want. We're not just about taking your clutter away, we're about sometimes putting it in beautiful trays, or putting it
mm,
in places with labels
mm,
that can create this mind map. How reflexive and responsive the
mm.
work you do and the work I do, that really is. And I think that's perhaps important for folks listening.
Yeah, and not beating
Is
yourself up that you can't be the meticulous person who doesn't have
mhm,
anything. But that's never going to be you. I'm never going to be short and blonde, or I'm never going to be an X Factor singer or something. It's like, and that's part of
mm,
growth, isn't it? Is like, no, I'm not that, but I am this. I am this,
mm,
and I can work with this.
mhm. And such an important part of therapy, isn't it? I
Mm.
What is it Carl Rogers said, the founder of person-centered therapy? When I accept myself as I am, the paradox is I can then change.
Yeah, I can
And
become.
so many of us, yeah, exactly, that we're looking to force ourselves a star-shaped peg into a round hole or whatever.
And I think, I mean, self-confession, when I started therapy years ago, I wanted to be somebody else. That was
Yeah,
what
pick me
that's
too.
that's what got me in the door. Like, please change me. I don't want to be this one. Can I have another one, please? Can I be a different variety? But
I
then
don't want to be this one.
if it's working, eventually you kind of land in your own
Mm,
neurosis, and you work with it, don't you? So
mm. Oh, Helen, that is well, for me that feels like a beautiful place to end. But I do want to just check if there's anything pressing that you want to say before we do go.
oh, but just to come back to where we started, which was the burial mound, not to be afraid of it, and also to remember that in there are treasures, and those treasures are you. So that when you're going to that excavation, that you're finding bits of you, and you're re kind of connecting, and it, if that means you're at 60 and you start playing the piano, then that's what it means.
Helen Sanderson, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to find out more? Because yeah, I can imagine lots of people will.
They can find me at my website, which is helensanderson.com, and or on Instagram for the Clutter Therapist. So find me on social medias under the Clutter Therapist, and come join my mailing list. And there's lots of things that I've got going on, and probably other things happening that I can't remember.
I'm going to sign up right away. As soon as we hang up, I'm going to sign up for that newsletter. I imagine there's all sorts of little tips. I love the way you play with language. And obviously, it's clear you're a writer. The way that you use language kind of makes things just feel um, yeah, gentler, kinder, more accessible for people. I think it's been really
Mm.
beautiful listening to you talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy, and I really hope that people get some inspiration.
Maybe people could send you photos on their via Instagram of things that they've done as a result.
Absolutely, that would be fantastic. I'd love that.
Thanks for being with us this episode. The B-side, which takes one aspect of this episode and digs a little deeper into how that might be explored in the therapy room, will drop very soon. In the meantime, if you'd like to have more of our conversations and metaphorical excavations, it would be grand for you and grand for us if you would subscribe to the podcast or share a favourite episode with a friend.